Okay, my line of questioning is going to go to the issue of Angel Flight and the instrument that has been tabled in the Parliament, and I've moved a disallowance which will be decided in the next Parliament. But I do want to talk to you about some details, because obviously you are in the processes of investigating a flight, an Angel Flight that occurred. So that's the context, and I'll put on the record that I've spoken to a number of people involved who've talked to me about various different matters, and I'll just put also on the record that because they're connected to these proceedings and the questions I'm about to ask, I view them as being protected by parliamentary privilege, because some people may have talked to me about.
Just hold on, let's be clear.
Sure.
What are you endeavouring to establish here? That
I'm just saying.
Because you mentioned them.
No, I'm saying I might ask some questions that go to some of the investigations that have been carried out, that they're currently carrying out.
Yeah, but why would these individuals? Why would you need to put on record these? It just sounds like you're bestowing parliamentary privilege to, and it may be the case.
I'm just saying that I've had conversations with people who perhaps told me things that they might not otherwise have been able to tell me, but for the fact that I'm about to engage in some questions.
Yeah, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure you should give them the confidence that the Parliament. Well, no, Rex. I just don't want to leave it hanging.
Okay.
The words parliamentary privilege were used. I'm not sure that it's up to us to bestow that on a whistleblower, if you like, who's shared information or documents with you. I don't know that it just works like that. We've already had, you might remember, we had some in-camera whistleblowers recently, and the advice we had was that information at their disposal in a documentary form probably shouldn't have been.
I've taken advice from the clerk, so.
Oh, all right. Well, if you want to cite the clerk into the hand, so you go ahead.
Yeah. Okay.
Senator,
so
would it help if I just outlined where we're at in terms of the investigation?
my understanding is that. Well, yeah, you can do that. Yeah.
If I may. Senators, on the 28th of June 2017, a Tobago aircraft impacted terrain near Mount Gambier, killing all three on board. The ATSB sent an investigation team, and obviously we followed due process since then to investigate the accident, and then of course to provide the natural justice opportunity to those directly involved in that accident, that being primarily the regulator, Civil Aviation Safety Authority, and Angel Flight to respond to us. We provided an extension to those parties up until last Friday. We've received a substantial submission from both parties, and from my perspective, in terms of due process, natural justice, public interest, and of course the sensitivities of next of kin, the ATSB hasn't traditionally talked about investigations that are currently underway, and we think we're about a month to a month and a half away from the final publication of that investigation report.
Sure. On my question, I'm not going to go to the accident itself. Okay. So I respect that that you wish to. That there's good reasons for us not speculating on things. What I want to do, however, is I want to match the instrument that's been tabled against facts that are involved in that particular accident. So you'd be aware that an instrument has been tabled that requires, 250 hours of in command time. Just a simple question of fact, because we were told that this instrument was in some sense in response to the previous Angel Flight crash, and indeed this crash. The pilot in both of those crashes didn't have, or they had more than 250 hours, is my understanding. I'm just asking you to confirm that. I can actually go through each one of the requirements in here and ask you whether or not it would have had an effect on the previous flight and indeed this flight. So I'm not actually trying to get to the cause of the accident.
Yep, sure.
I'm trying to focus on if this instrument were in play, would it have made a difference in either Mount Gambier or the previous flight?
And Senator, thank you. The difficulty for us is that being in the natural justice process,
Sure.
we've done our analysis, we've come up with our draft findings. We're obviously aware of the CASA instrument. We weren't consulted in relation to the CASA instrument, but we're aware of it. And of course, commenting on the merits of CASA's instrument in a draft report sense, in our findings, is not complete. So, as I said, we've received substantial input from both Angel Flight and from CASA in relation to our draft report. And so I think it's premature for us to comment in relation to CASA's instrument.
But for example, in the case of the Mount Gambier flight, my understanding is the pilot had something like 350 hours in command time.
My understanding,
and that's just a question of fact. That's not revealing anything.
No, it's my understanding it was below 500 hours. Yes.
And it wasn't in a helicopter, although I know the helicopter's now been removed from a new instrument. But I could go to maintenance requirements. There's a requirement in the new instrument that talks about whether or not the pilot must check whether the aeroplane has undergone a periodic inspection within the last 100 hours of service of the aeroplane. Now, my understanding is in both of those cases, and you will have knowledge of this, that requirement there would not have changed the outcome either in Mount Gambier or in the previous flight.
So, Senator...
just before you do, Senator, you're doing a bit of the butler in the library with the candlestick here. You're going slowly dismantling. I mean, Mr Hood indicated he didn't want to contribute to your comparative, and now you're going line by line.
No. Well, in fact, what I offered at the start was for him to say, he could simply tell me. So I'm not trying to get to what the cause of the flight is or what happened. I'm trying to get to this instrument and whether or not that instrument
but if you rule out that the pilot was under 500 and the aircraft had two wings and one wheel, you're eventually going to rule out things that don't impact on the instrument, therefore would be findings.
Well, I'm not trying to get to the cause of the accident, Chair. I'm simply trying to examine whether
Were you at the CASA briefing in this room? Because I put to CASA whether those two events that they had cited had any bearing on the development of the instrument. They told me they did not. They told me that's not why they developed the instrument, and that neither of those accidents would have been prevented, if you like, had the instrument been in place. That's been that wasn't in evidence, but that was in a briefing.
Well, I'm trying to get to an understanding of why they've changed what they've changed. And my understanding is in your report, once again, without going to the details of your report, you spend a lot of time looking at Angel Flight, the operations of Angel Flight, as opposed to the accident as it occurred.
Senator, in our draft report, we've looked at both the what happened and the why in terms of the Angel Flight accident at Mount Gambier, and consistent with looking at the why, we've obviously looked at the operator as we have looked at the regulator as well. I think the other point to make might be that we're completely independent of CASA in this matter. We,
Sure.
Our report has been developed in complete isolation of any action that CASA may have chosen to take in relation to that instrument.
Sure, but if I just explore that, if you're intending to make some adverse outcome or finding in relation to Angel Flight, perhaps suggesting that their pilots are under pressure, for example, because that was indicated to us by Mr. Carmody, that their pilots are under a particular pressure because they, because of the nature of these flights. I'm presuming if your report, well, my understanding is your report does effectively say that, and your draft report says that, but not grounded by evidence. You haven't interviewed in your report you haven't gone to a whole range of different Angel Flight pilots and talked to them about pressures that they may have?
Senator, our methodology requires us to be evidence-based,
Sure.
and a final report will be evidence-based.
Okay.
I think in relation to maintenance procedures, for example, we'll make some statement in our final report about that. But in relation
But
to...
that's in relation to the particular flight, isn't it?
It'll be in relation to our observations whether maintenance is a contributing factor to any of the accidents or incidents we've looked at. I really don't think that I should be in a position to prejudice the final report, given that we've got substantial feedback from the involved parties.
Okay,
and we're in the process of examining that to incorporate that into
without going
the
to the
final
report, have you gone out and talked to a whole range of angel flight pilots?
Part of our methodology is obviously to speak to witnesses and involved persons.
Okay, so witnesses to the flight, to the
certainly witnesses to the accident.
Okay, so I understand that, and
involved persons.
And involved persons would be, I presume, Angel Flight and.
Senator, we've talked to a number of people in relation to this investigation.
So my question, this does not go to the outcome of your investigation, but in the process of your investigation, have you talked to a number of Angel Flight pilots to try and establish whether or not they are under pressure to commence a flight or to
Senator, certainly in pursuance of the reasons why the accident happened, we've talked to a number of people that are well informed in this space.
I'm being really specific, and I really would like an answer to this. Have you talked to Angel Flight pilots, a number of them, and if so, how many, in respect of pressures that might be put on them relating to community service flights?
Senator, we have talked to Angel Flight pilots, and I have to take on notice how many.
How many? Okay.